Hey everybody, welcome back to another video, and today I'm going to be doing something I've wanted to do for a little while, and actually something people seem to be interested in, which is me showing how I make my videos, basically my setup, the parts I use. And before I start, I want to establish one very clear thing, that I have accumulated a lot of this stuff over the years, and having hardware like this doesn't make you a good content creator, so take what I show you with a grain of salt. I've been working on videos for years, I've been making content for years, and this is what I found fits my needs best, but you can do just as much or close to as much with a lot less. So just want to set that out right up front. But either way, this is going to be fun. It's going to be long. Let's dive in. So starting off with this here, this set, which is actually not even a set. I'm sitting on a Gibraltar drum seat just off to the side of my living room, and you're literally looking into my living room with my TV and TV stand and the game collection and all that. It's basically just a little setup off to the side of my living room with a camera pointed at it. Pretty simple. The way that I have the TV set up works really well because I essentially just change whatever's on the screen to whatever's relevant for the video. So I'll put a picture up if I'm talking about a product that has a picture for it. I will play a video if I'm doing something like an anime review. I'll just put an episode of the anime up on the screen, or for general stuff like this, I just use the Apple TV built-in screensaver. It's pretty and works well. And because it's behind me out of focus, I can use like lower res images and nobody's really going to notice or care. And below it is my TV stand, also known as a 1993 ColorTrax RCA television. Yes, it's a CRT. You can't play Duck Hunt on an LCD screen. That's why I have a CRT. I love it, and I hope it doesn't die anytime soon. Knock on wood. Speaking of wood, I just use these little tables here. They're little rolling tables. They work well, and I can put them together and make a coffee table, or I can roll them apart and use them for individual things, which is awesome. On top of the table is my audio recording setup. So for this setup, the audio is actually recorded separate from the video, and I sync them later. The audio is recorded in the Voice Memos app on my iPad Pro, and I record it through a HyperX microphone, just a little thing that I had. I tried GarageBand and I tried a few other options, and back when I was using a MacBook, I would use that alongside Logic, but with the fan noise of a MacBook Pro, I was more than happy to switch over to using an iPad Pro because it did just as much, and using Voice Recorder, everything just syncs right over to my Mac without me having to transfer anything, courtesy of iCloud. Freaking great. Now when it comes to video and lighting, we'll start with lighting. I use 3 different lighting sources, and of course a bay window, which can be super inconsistent, which is why I usually try to record at night or in the mornings, never in the afternoons or during sunset, because the light just comes right in the bay window, and I don't have blackout curtains, which I've been meaning to get. But the first light is just my living room light. It's a little swivel. I call it Luxo because it looks like the Luxo lamp from the old Pixar animation, but I just basically set my hue light to 4500 Kelvin, point it at me, that's it. The other one is basically just a matte box light that I bought off Amazon. I don't remember the brand. And then the other one is a ring light that I bought from Best Buy that they don't make anymore. But it works out well. It's on a tall enough stand that you don't get the little, see the rings? If I don't look up too much, you don't get the ring in my glasses, which I used to get when I put it right in front of the camera. And speaking of the camera, I use a Sony a6300 set to 4K with a 100 megabit per second record rate so that I can get the most amount of data out of these videos, hopefully get as little noise as possible. Underneath of it is a battery pack. Something that is not purchasable, you're not going to find it, I actually bought it at a thrift store, is the lens I use. Yes, believe it or not, I bought the lens at a thrift store. It is a Yashica DX 50mm. This is from like the 70s. And this was a lens that came off of a film camera. It's an old M24 screw mount I had to buy an adapter for. But the natural blur that it gives you and the sort of odd bokeh shape that I can get for B-roll shots, I couldn't resist, so I bought it. And then to actually see how the recording is going between shots, I have an HDMI cord run to an HP monitor that they also don't make anymore. It actually used to be my main monitor when I was doing reaction videos, but that is my reference monitor set off to the side. Makes it nice and easy for me to see how things are going, see if the camera's still running and recording, all the fun stuff. And for this setup, that's literally it. Camera, tripod, 3 lights, the monitor, my backdrop, which is just my living room, and my iPad with the audio recording equipment. Can't get more simpler than that. More simpler. That is a sentence I said out loud. So now with this out of the way, let's move to the other spot where I record my videos, which is also the spot where I edit my videos. So it'll be all convenient to talk about everything in one spot. So let's do it. So moving over to this section, we pretty much just have my office. It's really just my office. I have an L desk here, which is kind of cool. So I can put things here that I want to talk about in like a tech video and just do it right here. For the bigger tech videos, I still use the other set, but yeah, this is just my office. The L desk works fantastically for what I'm trying to do whenever I want to talk about stuff. And when I'm not making videos with this set, I can just throw things on here that are out of the way, because as you can see, I have a bit of a cluttered workspace. It also works out really well because I have a backdrop that's just fairly visually interesting. I have a bunch of anime figures that were either given to me by fans or won in a contest. I have a few that I bought. I got my CD collection, I've got my manga stuff, a Ruby painting that my sister actually made for me. A bunch of really neat stuff that just makes the background visually very interesting. Now there is a small change to the camera setup here. I do use a different tripod, obviously, in a different location, but I also changed the lens and the audio recording setup. So for the audio, I actually used this Rode Mic Go lavalier mic setup because it's just easier to do it this way for the distance that I have between me and the camera, and it means I don't have some big mic hanging down like I'm a YouTube streamer or something. And then for the lens, I use a Vivitar 28mm, which is actually a Pentax lens from the late 80s. And again, it's just an interesting lens. It was cheap, and I got it with a cheap camera that I bought from a thrift store, and I just loved the look of the camera lens, so I use it on my camera. But the camera itself is exactly the same. I don't change anything with that. Generally, when I'm sitting over here, I'm either doing a tech video talking about something that I can have on the desk, or I'm doing a reaction video. And the reaction video is very easy to record here because I pretty much just turn and look to the right and watch whatever I put up on my monitor, and it shrinks well enough in the view window that I make that I don't have to worry about it being oddly placed or anything like that. Just, it works super well. So yeah, this set/office is just something I use on occasion when I want to talk about tech and it's a smaller video, or if I feel like it fits the setup well. And of course I use it for my reaction videos. But this general space here is primarily for sitting down and editing my video footage. So this is where we're going to talk about my editing process and what I use. First things first, it's the thing that everybody asks when they see these: what monitor do I use? These are not made anymore, so you're not going to find them, but I had to look it up. These are Dell S2719DM displays. Brilliant naming. It's about on par with Sony, so good job there, Dell, but they don't make these anymore. They are HDR 500, 1440p monitors, pretty basic, but they run through HDMI. I got them because they were very clean. The bezels were the same size the whole way around, even though it had the little Dell logo on the bottom. I love them. They've been fantastic. They're better than what I was using before. Just overall great monitors. And whatever the newest version of this is, if you can find whatever they replaced this with, which is probably some 4K thing, I would go for it. I can fully recommend these Dell monitors. They're fantastic. Now, sitting up on top of the monitor for the occasion that I have to actually do a FaceTime call, I have a Logitech Brio 4K camera, so looking past me into my kitchen has never looked so good, but I got it at a really good price, so hard to say no. We'll talk about the computer and my connected storage and my workflow in a minute, but first I just want to talk about the peripherals. So the peripherals that I have here are obviously, number one, my bonsai tree. Took me forever to build that. I'm joking. So first, starting off, we have my Magic Trackpad, which I'm weird. I love editing on a trackpad. I think it is one of the more convenient and ergonomic things. I always used to see the people who used a stylus on the Wacom tablets as their mouse and keyboard replacement, and I never understood that. And then I started using a trackpad, and once I got one for the desktop, I kind of got it. Still don't know about the whole pencil thing, but at least in terms of using the trackpad, I love it. And controversially for some people, I use the Apple Magic Keyboard with the 10-row number pad. I like it, and if I like it, that's what matters. It has all the keys that I'm looking for, obviously, because it's a keyboard, but it also has the control keys for a lot of stuff. I like it. You can hate it. It's my preference. It's my workflow. Shut up. Now, when it comes to audio equipment, I use a Presanos AudioBox i2. This is actually something I bought because it could have hooked up to my iPad, but I actually never bothered to do that. But this works fantastically. It has audio in for guitars. It has audio in for XLR, which is great when I do my recordings with any sort of vocal covers. It has phantom power. You can switch between recording with, just a mic, or you can record with a mic and a guitar. And it came with a decent set of headphones that I'll use for like a quick mix. And then once I'm done with the mix, I will hook it up to something like my AirPods Maxes or another good set of headphones that I have, something like the DB710s? I don't know, I'm letting somebody borrow them. I don't remember what they're called at the moment. I'll put it in the description. But that audio box is phenomenal, and it's been with me since I was living at home, so I can highly recommend it. So now we move on to the computer and the storage that I use. So for the computer itself, I have an M1 Mac Mini, which is actually going to be replaced soon with the Mac Studio whenever that arrives. But for right now, I have a Mac Mini M1 with 16 gigabytes of RAM and 512 gigs of storage, which has been more than enough in both cases. 16 gigs of RAM has only recently become a limit, and 512 gigs of storage has never been a problem. And the reason it's never been a problem is because I have, at this moment, accessible to this computer over 5 hard drives, or 5 means of storage. So for starters, I have a Quizlabs Mac Mini dock. This is actually something sent to me for review. You can check out the video right up over there, but this gives me USB up at the front, 2 SD card readers, and a Type-C port, but it also gives me my first 2 connections for storage. So the first drive in there is a 1 terabyte NVMe drive. Now this is used for things that are more demanding, videos like this, or even in a lot of cases, projects that just have a lot of assets that need a lot of data being moved all at once. And yeah, it's not as fast as the internal drive, but the storage I use doesn't even need internal drive speed. It barely needs the speed of the NVMe drive to begin with, so I use that. The other drive inside is a 2 terabyte SSD, a Samsung QVO SSD, and this is used for bigger projects that don't need as much speed, something like a Logic Pro project, or even something like a reaction video where I don't need a lot of speed because there's not a lot of assets to it, and generally the more demanding bits come from the editing process, not from the storage. So yeah, underneath the Mac Mini is the first set of storage, and it is exclusively assets and project storage. That is it. I don't put anything else on those 2 drives, just the assets that I use on a regular basis and projects, period. And yeah, I could put them on the internal drive, but considering that it's just as fast and I see no performance difference in the access for the storage, I don't need more than 512 in any of my machines. I've got more than enough underneath. But when I'm done with those projects and everything's exported, there's a few different places that everything goes. So for starters with backups, I use a 10 terabyte IronWolf NAS rated drive that I've used for years, and that lives in what I call the toaster. This drive basically just exists for me to pull any file from in the case that I lose it, or something gets corrupted, or a program crashes and screws something up. I have everything that I'm currently working on backed up there. This also includes things like asset backup. So if I need an asset and I don't know where it is, or it's corrupted like the projects, I can pull it from that 10 terabyte drive. Now next to my toaster is my 14 terabyte EasyStore drive, and this drive pulls double duty for saving footage. Not only do I put my finished projects on here, meaning the thumbnail and the actual video that you end up seeing when I post it to YouTube, but I also load on every piece of raw footage that I ever record. So if I ever want to pull something for reference that maybe I want to change the color on or use more of, I don't have to cut it out of the video I originally used it on. I can just pull the original video right off of that drive. And that is basically why that drive exists and why it's so big, because footage can be massive, and I prefer to actually keep it instead of having to pull it from something that would immediately reduce the quality. But keeping things in one place is not the smartest move when it comes to backing up data. So not only do I have it on my 14 terabyte drive, but for everything that is finished, so not the raw footage, but any finished projects are backed up on 2 different 8 terabyte drives. One of which is actually sitting behind me. I retrofitted an 8 terabyte drive into an old Apple airport router. And the other one is just a USB backup drive that I have hooked into one of my routers. It's the stupidest thing I ever thought of, but it's also something that works phenomenally, and now I can't imagine using my setup without it. So right there we already have 6 drives keeping this thing fed with data and keeping things safe. But on top of that, I have 2 more drives running off of a Mac Mini that is running Mac OS with Server on it. And that allows me to easily distribute any projects, any footage that I want to offload somewhere else or send to a client or anything like that. So there is another 2 drives worth of storage. I got a lot of storage. I'm terrified if any of these drives go bad. I actually need to get a proper NAS at some point. Now, when it comes to editing my videos, the program that I use primarily is Final Cut, and for the titles, I will occasionally use something like After Effects, but I have been a Final Cut editor for years. I moved away from Adobe Premiere years ago when I realized that for every new Mac that came out and every OS update that Apple did, Adobe Premiere was usually about 12 steps behind, and then when they finally made up 6 of those steps, Apple would move forward with another update and Adobe would be 12 steps behind again. And When I rendered out a project for the first time in Final Cut and then tried it again in Premiere, and the time was literally halved by Final Cut, I was pretty much sold. Oh yeah, and I totally forgot to mention, for a lot of the B-roll footage that I use, I literally just record it straight off of my iPhone 13 because the camera is that good. And because I use a Mac and because I edit on Final Cut, sending footage from this over here, and as I alluded to earlier, sending audio over from my iPad is dumb simple, because if iCloud doesn't sync it fast enough, I can just airdrop it over. And with the SD card reader on the front of this, courtesy of the Quizlabs dock, I can just plug an SD card directly into the front of my Mac or front of the dock and just dump all my footage in when I'm ready to use it. But aside from that, I don't really do anything crazy when it comes to the upload process. I'll make my thumbnails in Photoshop, and maybe if I'm really feeling lazy, I'll even make them in what I call the TN projects in Final Cut, which is just slapping a bunch of elements together in a Final Cut timeline and exporting one frame. So if you ever wonder how I make some of my lazier thumbnails, that's how. I use Safari for upload. I know most people use Chrome. I use Safari. I like it better. But aside from that, there's nothing super crazy about my edit or upload process. I think the craziest bit is just the amount of data I use to back things up, how I edit stuff. It's just how I've come accustomed to using things. But really, that's all I use. I have 3 lights that I rotate around depending on where I need lighting. I have one camera that has been the most reliable thing I've ever purchased. I have one mic set up for one set and another mic set up for another. Some great monitors that aren't made anymore, unfortunately. A Mac Mini with a great dock and a just crap load of storage attached to it. B-roll footage off my iPhone, audio recorded on my iPad, Final Cut for editing, Photoshop for thumbnails, Safari for uploading. Can't get easier than that. I don't know, I was kind of excited to make this, and now the more I go on, I feel like I'm kind of showing off. So I'm just gonna cut it short now and say, thanks for watching. If you have any questions about anything else, like if you want to see my streaming setup, anything like that, let me know. I'm down for it, but this was something I was kind of excited for, but I want to cut it short so I don't feel like I'm showing off or anything. So thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Please make sure to like and subscribe. I will be doing sort of an update to this when I do my review for the Mac Studio. Keep an eye out for that, and aside from that, I'll see you in the next video. Make sure to be there and have a good one.